Mavis is a diesel engine belonging to the Farker Quarry Company. They bought her to shunt trucks in their sidings. She is black and has 6 wheels. These, like Toby's, are hidden by side plates.
Mavis was a diesel who was introduced into the last book of the Railway series to be written by the series creator, the Reverend Audrey, before he handed the series down to his son. Mavis is not like other characters in the Railway series. For starters, she's a female character, which is not something we saw a lot of, and unlike our main female characters like Daisy, who was rude, manipulative and lazy, or Annie and Clarabelle, who were minor characters with very little control of the world around them, Mavis was a character who spoke her mind and tried to fight her way out of her quarry. You saw the title of this video, and we shall mention Toby in a bit, but first we need to understand Mavis and what drives her as a character. In her introductory line in the book Tramline Engines, we hear she is bought by the Farquhar Quarry Company, and already she is compared to Toby by the mention of her wheels. She is young and doesn't care about what anyone thinks of her. She puts the trucks where she wants and not where they're needing to go. Already this paints a pretty clear picture of Mavis. She isn't your stereotypical housewife style of female character we have seen in the Railway series up until now. This is also where we hear a little more about Toby as a character. With every other character, Toby is pretty laid back. He sometimes gets tired of Thomas and Percy fighting, but with Mavis this is the first time we see him get genuinely cross with someone. He tells her to take the trucks herself as he can't be bothered to argue with her. Some could say this is out of character for Toby to be so annoyed, but I think it fits him well. With James, Thomas and Percy, while they may annoy him at times, he brushes it off as he knows they mean well mostly. However, Mavis will not listen to him, so she is someone who will not listen to his wisdom, which is new for him. It also makes sense for Mavis to be off with Toby. She has come to a quarry, she runs by herself, and now some new engine is trying to tell her how to do things. This feud gets worse when she meets Daisy, who has no idea about trucks, and even though she's friends with Toby, will say anything to make friends with a diesel. She reinforces that idea that Toby knows nothing and is a fusspot. This is why when Toby tells Mavis how to handle the crossing, she ignores him and gets herself stuck. Toby is furious about this, not only because she ignored him, but called him an old fusspot too. He doesn't even want to help, and wants to leave her there to teach her a lesson. Until his driver reminds him that if it had not been for him losing his temper and taking the trucks himself, Mavis would not be stuck. Toby realises that, so puts aside his anger and puts on a smile so he can help Mavis, teaching her as he does. This shows us a bit more about Toby, and a side we've never seen before. He was so furious with her, but he realised it was his own fault things got this bad, through letting her take the trucks to begin with, and from her having spoken to Daisy. Mavis, we also learn, is impressionable and dislikes authority and tries to prove she can handle the work just as well as the men on the line, which is a good role model, while still being a flawed character for young girls who read the Railway series. In Toby's Tightrope we see more of this. Told to behave by her manager, it only makes her crosser. She makes plans so she can go down the line and asks the trucks to bump her. However, Toby came along at the wrong moment and took the trucks himself. They bumped him instead. Mavis, however, was quick to help, surprisingly quicker than when Toby was to help her, even if the situation is a bit more serious this time round. The most interesting part of this book is the end, where the narrator says,
Mavis is now a welcome visitor at Farker Shed. She's still young, and still makes mistakes. But she's never too proud to ask Toby.
Not only does this show a bond between the two, but that Mavis, while learning her lesson, isn't a reformed character. She's still young and still makes mistakes like anyone else. The only other times we've seen Mavis in the Railway series, it's not very important, so let's move on to see how the TV series handles Mavis and her character and the journey she goes on in the adaptations of these 2 episodes.
Mavis is a diesel engine who works for the quarry company, shunting trucks in their sidings. She has 6 small wheels hidden by side plates just like Toby's.
The episode Mavis starts off the same way as the book does. However, where it fails is when she meets Diesel, who replaces Daisy in the adaptation. Instead of someone telling her Toby is a fusspot and that only steam engines can manage trucks, she is the one to claim it. This makes her out to really dislike Toby from the get-go, instead of being pushed to it by hearing it from someone else. This changes Mavis from a young engine who would not have gone against Toby without pressure, to an engine who would have done it anyway. The rest of the episode plays out more or less the same, but already it has twisted the relationship the two have into something a bit more, toxic, not exactly friendly, which Mavis already actively dislikes Toby. In Toby's tightrope, we start off with Percy going to the quarry. In this episode, both Percy and the manager tell her off for not listening to Toby. The rest of the episode follows the book apart from the end, where she is allowed back onto Toby's line. It's been changed to...
And so it was arranged. Now Mavis is as happy as can be, and the Fat Controller thinks she's really useful indeed.
This may seem like a small non-issue, but it's really damaging for Mavis as a character as we go forward. Her next speaking role is in Stepney Gets Lost.
The line can be spooky, said Mavis.
She doesn't say much, but what she does say is really foreshadowing a major shift in her role in the series. You saw her working with Toby in the clip I last showed, and you may say, so what? But this really shows the start of Mavis becoming less of an independent young woman with ideas of her own and more the motherly figure who follows the rules constantly. We see this in full force when we next see her again in Series 6. In Salty's Secret, she is now working at the Centre Island Quarry with Bill and Ben. She started giving Salty warnings about the trucks and shows compassion towards him. Don't get me wrong, Mavis is a compassionate engine, but all she does is care for Salty in this episode. The Series 3 or Railway Series Mavis would have been grumbling about the trucks or mentioning how she understood, as she was once trapped at the quarry. It honestly feels like because they've paired her up with Bill and Ben, she's not allowed to be the cheeky or naughty engine she once was, now filling a role that once would have been Boca or Edwards. I don't want to cover every time we see her again in the Hit era, as a whole, everyone in the Hit era is out of character.
Whee!
However, let's move on to another time we see Mavis, again from Series 6. Buffer Bother. Mavis spends this whole episode telling Bill off for being envious of Ben, which is quite odd considering her whole arc is that she's envious of Toby. It's also frustrating as the younger Mavis was so much more fun than this and wasn't just there to shout at other engines, and it would have been great to see more of her. Even when Bill gets Mavis dirty, all she says is, "Oh Bill," which is a far cry from the younger Mavis who would have complained and grumbled. The closest thing we got to a Mavis episode in the CGI series was Thomas the Quarry Engine from Series 18, and Mavis is so much closer to what she should be than I expected. She has grown from Series 3 as she can handle the trucks, but she still longs to see more of the island. She really likes the idea about taking the trucks, but she's unsure about leaving her work, but goes anyway with Diesel as she really wants to see the island. This is a good mix. She's excited to see the docks, but is nervous about leaving her choir work. It shows she's learned to be more responsible without changing her character too much. It's so much better than what the previous seasons did. It also shows more of that impressionable side we haven't seen since Season 3, as Diesel convinces her to keep doing the odd jobs as he knows she wants to see more of the island and he wants to leave all the choir work to Thomas. She also sees through him at the end when he tries to cover for himself and claim it was Mavis who was too excited and blames her for not getting back to the quarry soon enough, after Thomas's crash. The episode ends with the Fat Controller giving Mavis some more freedom to take trucks down to the docks, similar to the Series 3 episode. It should be no surprise to anyone that this episode was written by Andrew Brenner, who I think honestly really understood these characters a lot more than anyone really gave him credit for at the time. What does this mean for Mavis and Toby's dynamic? And it's a shame, because after Series 3, apart from a brief glimpse in Series 5, they're not paired up together, and they have a really good student-mentor dynamic that I think could have really evolved into something special, where we'd have had episodes where Toby's in the wrong, and Mavis with the fresh ideas has to come and save him, but unfortunately that never came to be. In the TV series, Mavis starts out as a nastier person. The impression given off if you've only seen the TV series is that Mavis is just not a very pleasant Diesel to hang around with, and that she doesn't like her elders at all, which couldn't be further from the truth if you've read the Railway series. From Series 6 onward, she just becomes a generic motherly figure for the island, which I think is a shame because she could be so much more. I hope in future more fan series will choose to have a younger Mavis, closer to the Series 3 or Series 18 one, who likes to work but can be grumpy and independent, who still gets things wrong rather than the perfect figure of authority the original Mavis would have hated.